everyone. Welcome to episode 99 of the Home Games Podcast. I'm Yazeed, and this is Joseph.
Hello, I'm Joseph, and today's Monday, January 17th, 2022. The last episode, the last time we spoke, we were talking about my pull request to remove the Squisher component from our Squish library, or from our Home Games core library, and moving it to our Squish library. So we're probably going to have some follow-up conversation about that. Also talked about plans for the rest of the year last episode. I don't know if you had any follow-up on that, but basically I will kind of expand, I guess, on my plans for the next few months. So kind of a follow-up there. So yeah, did you want to talk about the pull request that I put up, or did you want me to go first?
Well, actually, I wanted to bring something up about the format on the podcast. You'll notice that we brought the previously on last time's episode of the Home Games Podcast. And I was going to ask you if we could intro it like that.
Oh, like previously on the potty.
Yeah,
we could do that.
like Dragon Ball Z style.
Yeah, I have to practice my like really exaggerated announcer voice, but we can go for it. Especially because next episode's 100, even though technically this is episode 100. We made that joke earlier. I don't know if you want to keep it up. I mean, episodes.length is 100. Array start at 0. Programmers.
Have you ever thought about maybe we should do do some faces for the screenshot for the thumbnail?
I've considered that. I've been giving a lot of thought to thumbnails lately because I've recognized that it's actually very important on YouTube to get clicks. But part of me, I would kind of feel fake if I were doing like a it's like talking about fucking JavaScript.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going that nuts over programming, except for when I do. But I like when it's kind of like a genuine reaction, like when YouTube will auto select one where I'm just like busting up. You know what I mean? Like that's nice.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, he's having a good time.
You're absolutely like bricked up. I get it.
Yeah, I don't really know what that means, but I can guess. So sure, I'll stay bricked up for this whole potty.
That's possibly unhealthy depending on how long this goes.
Yes.
Okay, here's the thing. I want to ask about if you had anything already pre-planned for next time's episode, but we can do that after this.
Sure.
That doesn't have to happen.
Yeah.
Since we talked about the big old pull request, I called it the big boy in my notes.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I spent my time reviewing the big boy. I like the code a lot. I think that it makes a lot of sense. I think I'm going to put out some comments and maybe honestly, I think what I might do is put out like a PR into that PR. Some small tweaks here and there.
Yeah.
And maybe leave some comments and ask some questions as I make some changes to it and stuff like that. But I think it looks really clean. I really like where it's at. And
thank you.
Yeah, I think you did a really good job, bud. Nice work.
Thank you. Yeah, I like the idea of doing a pull request to my pull request. I think that's easier to kind of track changes if we say, I like this stuff, but maybe you can change this a bit, and then kind of getting those changes into the one big bundle, and then getting the one big bundle out, and kind of like a almost like a peer coded type thing. I think it's kind of cool. So, yeah.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely do that approach then. Yeah, but like I said, I think it looks so clean compared to Squish this time last year. I think it's big boy code stuff. Nice work.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a big part of it was because like I've mentioned this briefly before, but I think we just have features in there that aren't quite ready yet. Performance profiling, spectators is kind of one of those. But even though it seems pretty resilient, like it still works, even though I didn't do anything to make it keep working. So anyway, there's just some stuff in there that just wasn't quite ready yet, and it was basically hacks in our existing code base. And so it was easier to remove those and then kind of know how I want them to work so we can add them later instead of trying to kind of redesign everything from the start with those things in mind. It was kind of just like if I run into a hurdle, just fucking abandon it, which I'll talk about later as well with some of the stuff I've been working on. But yeah, very much in that mindset of just like, if we don't need it to, quote, launch, then we don't need it. So.
Okay. I was actually going to ask you about the spectator stuff because I saw that like in the first few files that there was still like the spectator object, and I was like, I thought we cut that. But
yeah, it's probably leftover garbage. I mean, that's a pretty good. To me, that's a good candidate for like a static analysis tool to just look at like unused variables and unused properties and dead code, basically. I think that would be really valuable. But otherwise, it would just be like a manual checking like that, or just like, yeah, you're right, that should probably not be there because it's not used by anything to my knowledge. So, or I guess there's probably code elsewhere that is expecting it to exist, and maybe we just like turned off the part where you can access that code. And so anyway, it's a whole thing, but yeah, we can remove that.
Okay. Yeah. When as I go through and make changes and stuff, I'll try to like, I don't know about this. Like, I don't know a static analysis tool that just like runs on a code base. Well, besides like Webpack or something like that.
I guess like
you can add like a linter.
Yeah, I guess like if you had like a git commit hook for ESLint or something like that for it to go. Mm-hmm. I don't know if ESLint has any plugins or configuration to catch dead code like that, but I mean it would be nice. But yeah, as a pre-commit hook would be nice, because that would mean that unless we specifically request to not do that check, then by default it'll do that check, and it'll just be good for kind of code hygiene, I guess.
That's a good question. I don't know enough about ESLint yet, but I will find an answer to that question. One of my coworkers is really smart with it. She's like,
yeah,
giga Chad brain on it. Like, her brain is so wrinkly when it comes to ESLint rules. So I'll probably ask her.
Yeah, I imagine it's a pretty standard use case. I mean, besides, like unused variables and, hey, spacing and line breaks and whatever, I imagine dead code would be pretty.
Yeah. I know unused variables happens in the file, but I don't know if it's like unused variables like across stuff or like dead code, stuff like that. I'm not 100% sure on. So, but yeah, I will investigate that, but at any rate, I'll leave a note on the pull request, or just remove it in my pull request into that pull request if I don't find code that uses it, or whatever code it would have used. It is no longer like executable. That's the word.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then so once you get that done, I will review that, and then we can merge that into this pull request, and we can merge that into the main code base. And then at that point, you're gonna do TypeScript stuff for Squish. Is that still correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds good. Hopefully that'll be pretty soon. I imagine. I mean, I'm not trying to rush you on the follow-up pull request, whatever, but you can go ahead and hurry the fuck up on that. I mean, that'd be really nice.
Sorry. Did you want the follow-up pull request to include the TypeScript stuff, or do you want it like a kind of like the like small set of features into that I wanted to change, like small amount of code that I wanted to change? We get that into the bigger PR, and then we do TypeScript into that on top of that, or how'd you want to do that?
Yeah, I think it'd probably be quicker, at least, to get it with just your specific changes to the specific pull request, and then we can get that in. Just because I imagine if we run into like a back and forth feedback thing on the TypeScript, or we run into some sort of issue, it'd probably just be easier overall just to get it in on kind of like the main branch once we have all this other fuckery resolved.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. I can agree with that. Cool. I think that makes sense. Oh, that's one of the things that as I was going through it, I was looking through the files, and I was like, I think this is going to be easier, because last time we had code that was like referencing itself and each other in like a circle, and it was like a little hard to type. I didn't see any of that in this newer code, so I think the typing should be a lot simpler, more straightforward. And also, I know a lot more about TypeScript now from having worked with it for more months. So
nice.
Hopefully, it goes better and more smoothly.
Yeah, maybe when I eventually run into the home games builder, what did we end up calling that? Home Dome. That's the name of that
Home
service.
Dome? Yeah, Home Dome.
One of the problems with naming your stuff after dumbass ideas you had one night. Anyway, Home Dome, when it needs to do not even Home Dome. I'm talking about the wrong service. The builds, when we release binary builds of home games, and that includes all of the distributed stuff, it would be nice to have a good like set of build scripts to do all that TypeScript stuff. I also think that I want to show you how to use those build scripts and just kind of make them better overall, because they're kind of nail biters for me. Like every time I come back to that EC2 instance that has all of my modified build and deploy scripts on it, I always think like, man, I should really commit this and I should really clean this up and make it a set of useful tools to me, because at this point I barely know how my actual services are deployed. I really just know from reading my scripts to see what service lives where and how to build and deploy certain things, because I've kind of forgotten. So it's part of my thing to fix all that stuff. So when we get TypeScript in, the kind of pipeline, it would be nice to kind of loop you in on that stuff.
Yeah, that might be something we put in a private repo.
So I've given that like quite a bit of thought. I actually think I would prefer it to be in a public repo, and that's because besides, like, I guess it's no secret the way that we deploy our services. It's no secret the way that we build them. I guess it is kind of a secret because we don't really say it, but just like how many ECS tasks we have and the specifics of our infrastructure. But I don't think that's necessarily sensitive information. I mean, I'm not opposed to putting it into a private repo, but I also think I've already pushed a version of this to a public repo, so I'm just digging in my heels on that. But but I do think having the scripts out there is part of my kind of goal to just make all of this as transparent as possible. Like, this is literally my build script, and if you're interested in the infrastructure, you can read this. Knowing that we use DynamoDB doesn't really expose us to any specific problems unless they have my keys or my, really if they have my access token and key, then that's when it's a problem. Otherwise, it's like, hey, we use AWS.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I wasn't sure of like how that script was built. I'm like you said, I haven't seen that or interacted with it really directly ever. So yeah, I'd be down to take a look after we like TypeScript some stuff and just get more of the three main pieces of home games done like we've been talking about. So
yeah. Web core and Squish, and then there's this whole other nightmarish monster that I've been working on, which is all the services and stuff, which I guess I'll kind of talk about now. It's good that you liked the pull request that I put up, because I've used that as the base for this next round of work, so hopefully it's not too much updated there. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm not redesigning the dashboard. I'm taking the dashboard that I've already introduced in the pull request that I just I redesigned or whatever, and making the search bar and all the search functional. So basically making it talk to our home games database and all the services and stuff that are there for game info and for downloading and playing games and all that kind of shit. Basically what I did was, like I had just kind of referenced, is gone through our AWS console and just kind of took an inventory of it, mostly starting with the fact that our cost was so absurd. I had ECS tasks, which are used for stuff like landlord, and I think the home games website is also using ECS tasks, which is kind of stupid. I should convert that to something else. But those things, we have a DynamoDB table. I have some like personal S3 usage that's also in this as well, but it's a very small amount of the overall bill. But we have some EC2 instances. We have a few different things in our AWS bill. So I was just going to try to lower that number, because every month I get that bill and I'm just like, holy fuck, what am I doing? So basically I removed Elasticsearch. We had this Elasticsearch cluster that I was using because I had built this, kind of mock-up interface for this searching games and downloading and playing games. And the games are stored in a DynamoDB table, so Elasticsearch basically had a connection there, so DynamoDB would pipe to Elasticsearch and then make everything in that games table searchable, which was just not necessary. It's very nice. Elasticsearch does a lot of things for you, kind of like out of the box, and it's very cool and fast and all that, but I'm not paying $120 a month for an Elasticsearch cluster when I don't use Elasticsearch except for when I'm building like demos and shit. So I took out $120 of our total AWS bill every month, and now it's like $400 a month, which is still really absurd. So I'm trying to bring that down a bit, but to me that's at least more reasonable, because the stuff that we have up is the stuff I'm currently working on. I have a little bullet point here that just says Elasticsearch costs not worth it yet. At some point in the future, if people are really using this stuff and there's a need for like a really nice search service, searching by author, fuzzy searching, partial string matching, all that kind of stuff, then we can get it kind of no problem. It's just that I'm not going to pay for that until we need it. So kind of as a result, I started bringing down Elasticsearch, and then I started just going through all the other shit and was thinking, why is any of this here? How is this game table structured? Who the fuck wrote this? Oh my God, that whole kind of process. So what I ended up doing is essentially just scrapping all of my old DynamoDB tables and all of my old Dynamo data and just redoing the tables from scratch. And I'm just doing mock data. So I don't have real games being published. I don't have any of that kind of stuff. I'm just trying to rewire like the home games website, for example, where you can publish games and, and like list your games and stuff. So I'm trying to mock that list your games part on the home games website. I'm trying to mock that same list your games part on the home games app itself, right? Home games core on the dashboard. So essentially we have this landlord service that's aware of all of our games, which is talking to a DynamoDB table, which has all of the actual data for our games, and then a separate table for game versions. And Home Games Web and Home Games Core, right, our website and our app are both talking to the same API to list games and to get information about games. So basically just building a UI for those things and then mocking the data, like I said, with just what I think I want it to be. And then obviously when I get that finished, I'll build the backend services to put data in that format so everything kind of just goes as smooth as possible. So yeah, that's pretty much that, I guess, in terms of the actual core of the work stuff I've been doing. Still very much a work in progress, but it's going, and it's honestly, it's the most like work, because building web services is what I do like for a job. And so I've mentioned this before, but fucking working on the web service part of that, this is just not that awesome to me. So I'm looking forward to it when it's not. So I'm going to spend, like I've said before, the next couple months getting all this stuff nice and good and clean and all that before I kind of go into the next phase, which is doing that same thing and making sure everything is nice and good and clean, from the app to the website to the downloads and the publishing and the playing and the bugs and the fucking everything.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm sorry that this is work too for you. I also thought it was funny that you were like, yeah, I have personal EC2 use or something like that in your breakdown earlier. Well, and I was like, that's funny. All of this is personal use right now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's all personal use. And yeah, my S3 costs are like maybe like $10 a month or something, because I just keep backups of like every file I've ever had in the past 15 years. So that's what that is pretty much.
Man's literally like the digital hoarder.
I have 20 terabytes of storage on my computer right now, like as we speak. Anyway,
it's also kind of unfortunate that we don't have like a huge fan base, because I definitely could see the meme developing of Joseph redoing the dashboard as like a
I think about that too.
Reoccurring meme in chat.
Yeah, like I often think about how much better this show would be if people listened to it.
It would be.
It would be. No, so anyway, yeah, that's my thing. I have kind of another kind of segue that came from all of that stuff, but do you have any questions or concerns, or are you flabbergasted by our AWS bill?
That seems very high, but I also have no idea. I've never had an AWS bill before, so I have no idea how that's high or low.
There's a pretty nice breakdown of your costs and stuff, and the top of my breakdown before was Elasticsearch, so that was a pretty easy candidate to get rid of. The other ones are my Fargate instances, which is basically an AWS service that my understanding is it basically just brings up like Lambda functions or something as you scale up, so you don't need to worry about the instances. It's just, hey, run my service and then scale it when you need to. Here's some kind of like thresholds and stuff. Which is nice, and all that convenience costs money, so it's just like pretty expensive. But I do think that convenience is kind of worth it, because I don't like the mental burden of managing the instances that the things run on, and I'm a forgetful idiot and I don't document things even though I keep telling myself I should. So that's the kind of stuff that like shouldn't be my responsibility, because I'm dumb. So basically it's worth it to me for Fargate.
I nod and agree there. I don't think you're dumb, but I do agree that maybe documenting it would help.
Yeah, but even documenting it kind of sucks. I mean, I think in a perfect world, I would have defined all of our infrastructure with something like CloudFormation, which is a templating language essentially for your infrastructures. You can have version control of your infrastructure and documentation, like literally documented code of like what your infrastructure is and how services talk to each other and on what ports and what databases they require and all these things. So it would have been nice if I did that from the start, so that way I don't need to worry so much about maintaining it myself in the AWS console. And like you said earlier, all this stuff is personal, but I guess I've just been thinking, if this were to become something serious, even if it were just like an open source project that gets some sort of like grant or funding or however the fuck it works out, where this becomes something that needs to have like an entity outside of just me and you, just mucking around, then I would need to split out all these resources into a separate account and make them completely independent of me as an individual and all that kind of shit. I would assume so. I don't really know. But, just thinking about the maintainability of that kind of stuff. But in the moment, it's whatever. I'll just keep struggling.
Yeah. Home games coming to a bank near you.
Can you imagine, like, trying to take this to, like, a Shark Tank? I think about myself in front of Kevin O'Leary sometimes, like, trying to pitch this idea. And I'm like, hey, yeah, I don't really think I want to make, like, a lot of money with it. Like, I'm not trying to sell things. And he's just like, you're the dumbest bastard I've ever met. It's like a recurring dream. It's, like, really weird. Do you know who Kevin O'Leary is?
You said Shark Tank, and I was like, I don't know what sharks have to do with this. And then you were like, Kevin O'Leary, and I was like, I've never heard of a shark named Kevin O'Leary, but
Holy
I don't think
shit.
You're talking about a shark anymore.
You've never seen Shark Tank? It's a show on ABC where they get famous people, like Mark Cuban is on it. Kevin O'Leary is a famous business guy. He's like a billionaire or something. Damon John, the guy that made fucking FUBU. The lady. Anyway, there's a bunch of really, you don't know what FUBU is? Anyway, it's a clothing brand. There's it's a bunch of investors and people come in and they pitch their idea. And they either get funding or they don't. There's actually several famous products that have been funded by Shark Tank. It's like a huge thing, but whatever. It's not. You should look it up sometime. It's cool. But basically, the idea is just it's a pitch on TV show, and Kevin O'Leary is like the Simon Cowell type asshole dude. So I have like nightmares about being rejected by people when I'm trying.
Is this the show where somebody tried to sell a way to lock your door and it worked? Where the dude like drop kicked a door frame and the door wouldn't open or something like that?
Yeah,
I've seen a clip of it, but I don't remember anything else about it.
Yeah, that sounds like it was probably from Shark Tank. You should watch it. It's a good one of those like I'm on the couch all day and I've watched 17 episodes of this. It's really good. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, just thinking about like investment or whatever, like what this project looks like in the future. Or if it just kind of stays like a fun project, like a side project forever. It's just that these things do have costs, and so it's hard to balance literally zero income or idea or plan for income with costs. Yeah.
That makes sense. I think I would be a terrible person to bring into a high pressure sales pitch, by the way. I panic easily.
Yeah. There's a couple good moments on the show where people crack like that too, and it's really tough because I feel that where like your voice starts to get a little weak and you start to just like you're just holding back tears because you realize you suck, Yeah,
I know when anyone says anything mean to me, I collapse completely. That's not just in high pressure situations. That's just in general in my real life.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess kind of related to the cost stuff I was just saying, which is like my segue I was mentioning before, or not segue, it's kind of like a tangent, I guess is the word. Anyway, so I was thinking about the case of listing games when I was going through and redesigning our table. Basically, a kind of quirk of DynamoDB is that there is no real concept of a list items. Like there is no give me 10 items, give me the next page of 10, the next page of 10, just kind of give me them in some sort of, right, the way that you would do that like in SQL is just, a consistent order and then like limits and offsets. So for example, select X from, or select star from thing, limit 10, and then as long as you have a consistent order, you're basically going through pages of it. Dynamo doesn't have this. It's a NoSQL database, so there's no kind of underlying schema like that. There's no structure that it abides by besides a primary key and an optional secondary called a sort key. I believe I have those names correct. But basically, because there is no idea of listing games, there's or of listing database entries, there is a scan, which is kind of the equivalent, but it's much more expensive than a query. Basically, a DynamoDB accepts queries and scans. A scan is just give me your shit. A query is give me this specific shit, and I have to know one of the keys, or I have to know a key in an index that I've created on this. Is just kind of managed differently. So you need to know something about your data, and I could structure my data in such a way where, for example, I have a dummy key that's hard coded to a constant string, and then I can always query for that constant string to get like a pseudo pagination. But that's like a hack essentially to do something that I want it to do, but I know that one day I will replace it with Elasticsearch, right? So I was kind of thinking, what do we need listing for? If you're kind of browsing all games, I suppose that would be the case. And so to me, those expensive scan operations on the database, I guess, are fine. Like if it's just a handful of people doing that. Basically, for people unaware, there's like scanning a table in Dynamo is essentially going through all the data in your table and getting all of it until you run out. And these use read operations, and the way that Dynamo pricing works is through read and write operations per second. You can set it to scale automatically based off of how much traffic it's getting and all this other kind of stuff. But essentially, more reads is more cost. And so doing a lot of these scans at once is relatively expensive. So we can just kind of get by doing that expensive thing until we need this Elasticsearch nice system in the future, right? That'll allow us to like easily go through and search and like I said, partial match, fuzzy searching, date filtering, all that kind of stuff of like, I want a game that has, this many reviews and it has this average rating and it was uploaded in the past 8 days and all that kind of shit. We can do that someday, but I don't, like I said earlier, if it's not required for launch, I don't need it. So all that is just basically a big brain dump of why we might have a pretty subpar or slow or shitty list games experience until we don't. But I think a list games experience at the beginning is like not necessary. And what I imagine most of it would be is, hey, I downloaded this weird thing and I made this very simple game and I published it, IDK, LOL, and then you send a link to your friend or you send the name of it to your friend. And we have like exact string searching, for example, with a little service I built, or basically just Dynamo queries. We could do exact string matching or string starts with type stuff. So a very basic search. So if I wanted to just look at games made by Yazeed, I can search Yazeed and I would get your shit. So there's like a basic version of that discoverability stuff, which I think is good for a V1. There's a lot of talking.
Yeah, it makes sense. There's also like an intermediate solution maybe where landlord stores like a
cache?
So blanking on like a cache, like a cache that lasts like, I don't know, right now it could last infinitely long until we decide we need to update it because it's only you and me doing stuff with it. But like we could always change it to be like once a day or once every 5 minutes or whatever, however often we needed to do it. So that way people aren't rescanning the DynamoDB over and over again, and we can paginate it at the landlord level so that we don't have to provide everything for them, and we can do the querying and stuff off of what landlord has. Since I think you could probably set up something like Redis and have Redis as like the storehouse for it if we wanted to. It probably would be cheaper, but I mean, I'm not 100% sure. So maybe an intermediate solution to consider.
Yeah, no, that's correct. I mean,
scale up.
I think it's a fun problem, I guess. And it seems like a very common problem. I mean, like listing things in Dynamo, you can just search like on Google, DynamoDB list. You'll get a bunch of Stack Overflow questions and people just kind of confused and generally unaware of how Dynamo works and what they really want from it and thinking it's just like a SQL replacement. So it seems like a common thing, and maybe it would be cool to build an interesting solution around it. I guess it's time and effort that we don't necessarily need to put in. It's like we could do as much as I kind of hate the idea of like it's good enough, but it's good enough for launch, which is like an expensive list operation and some shitty searching. For me, that's like MVP, minimum viable product, or whatever. And if putting a search cluster is ultimately what we end up doing, or if we end up building our own kind of search implementation with kind of a cache that we maintain ourselves, which does sound like potentially fun to build. It's just, that sounds like it'd be like more to maintain, and it's just, there's so much to maintain.
Yeah.
On top of just life,
it is.
Fucking
yeah. I think I definitely don't think, I'm not suggesting we do that now.
Yeah.
I think maybe if we saw like 100 people using it, maybe not. Like basically, like at some point, it's more cost effective to do that, but not do Elasticsearch. And then it's more cost effective to do Elasticsearch and not worry about caching it yourself. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I think we had to like hit those like cost usage like watermarks or whatever
you have to do a cost benefit analysis and find the particular whatever, like inflection point, whatever the fuck it's called. Math and graphs and stuff.
Zenobia, she probably knows what that is.
Yeah, businessing. Yeah, I don't know. But I also, like, when you say 100 people using it, in my head, that's terrifying because 100 people using it sounds like, it either sounds like 100 people trying it out and they all hate it and it goes to 0 after that, or it sounds like 100 people turns into 200 people in a week and then 400 and 800, and that kind of growth. Like in that 1 week where I'm trying to build my intermediate service, I need the big shit, and I would rather have the thing set up for scalability when I'm actually like going for it, instead of like, hey, try this out, it's here technically, and then one day it's like we're scaling and we want to support all these people, because 100 people I don't think stays around 100 very long unless it's terrible, which I hope it's not.
Yeah. I mean, the other side of that too is like 100 people doing 100 lists is about 10,000 scans at that point, which is 10,000 reads, which gets expensive quickly. Sorry, I was doing math in my head. I was like, I don't know if that's even right, but you know how it goes.
The cost is per second, so it's like the scan would also depend on how many items are in the table, because it scans in chunks until it hits all of the data. So depending on how much data you have is how many chunks it's making or it's reading. And I think like the costs are pretty low. It's like 5 reads a second is something like $5 or $6 a month on the table. So even if we bump that to 20 reads a second, and I'm paying $15, $20, whatever it is, less than $50 a month on our database and all that, I think that's pretty reasonable for dozens of people to use the service. And at that point, then it's like, hey, maybe we should think about how to set this up financially, because we can't have 10,000 people making requests like this and we have to spend thousands of dollars a month on our AWS bill. At that point, it's not sustainable as a side project anymore. So it's like we have to get into that whole kind of thing, and that's probably a problem that we'll run into if this all goes well. But the focus, I think, is like just making sure it goes well, making sure people use and like this, because otherwise, it's like we're worrying about a problem that we'll never have.
Yeah, makes sense. I didn't know any about DynamoDB until you talked about it. That's crazy.
Hopefully that was informative. I was thinking maybe I'll try to like explain something I do kind of know about. I don't know. Try to be like informative or helpful on my fucking tech podcast.
You do talk about stuff a lot often that I learned from. This is one of those times.
Well, good.
I was actually talking tangentially about you. I'm gonna hype you up for a moment.
Okay.
I was talking to somebody about you, and I was talking to somebody who was asking me about like getting into like computer science, my different field.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, man, like if you have like something to do on the side so you can get around like the burnout and the high stress and anxiety you get when you're being a developer professionally, I say go for it. And I also told them like sometimes like you'll feel like you fall behind the curve on some of your friends, and you gotta like catch up. And I was like, sometimes I feel that way. Actually, I was like, honestly, like my friend, I was like, I name dropped you. I was like, my friend Joseph, I feel like his infinitely better than I am sometimes, and I've had to learn a lot from working with him. And I was like, so you'll almost always be learning stuff no matter how many years you spend writing code. And they were like, wow, that's so informative. And I was like, yeah, all right, go try to do this, I guess, if you want to.
I guess it's like, in my head, it's more, like, because I get that all the time. Like, there's always someone that's smarter than you, or not. Like, I'm not saying I'm smarter than you. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's always someone that knows something different than you. Yes. I'm not. Like, I guess acknowledging that you have something to explain to people, and they have something to explain to you, and you're always trying to learn, and it's like the classic thing or whatever, where if you're like the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room, and all that kind of stuff. And I just think that people have a lot to teach and learn from each other, and so like the whole thing with programming is that it's so fucking frustrating, and like it's so easy to get down on yourself. So yeah, I don't know. Like I definitely, like, I don't know, I appreciate it, but yeah, it's like, I don't know. I just think like comparing yourself to people is like just bad,
Yeah. I was talking a lot of it. I was like, him and I went to the same college. We graduated the same time. We took the same classes almost. It's like, some of it depends on like your first job. I was like, his first job, he was cracking the whip or whatever. he was living it up and writing all that code and stuff. And I was working at a company with like a older code base, and you don't learn stuff when you're working on a really old code base. So
that's true.
That was like my big point about it, was like, sometimes like your first job or like your first few jobs can like really matter in computer science. I feel like more than a lot of fields, probably, because you learn a ton on the job.
It's also that unfortunate thing of like, it's about networking and stuff, and just knowing people who work at certain companies can open up doors for you, and getting interviews and getting easy interviews, and it's all fucking bullshit. Like all that stuff is stupid because it's fake. It's just like, it's like the game that we all play with each other. It's like life, we kind of just all trying to get by. So it's like, hey bro, well, you want to fucking LinkedIn, maybe you can let me know in 6 months when you guys are hiring, type shit. So whatever. I just think the programming is fun, and I think people should try to get better at it, like we were talking about before the podcast. I was trying to build and improve, and I think that working on an old code base, even if it's like, you're not really learning new skills, it's cool to see at least what standards were like, or kind of what people are used to, or seeing how a company can maybe get crusty with old code base, and what in the culture causes it to become something that you don't want to work at. Like there's always something to be learned, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely learned from it, but if I was gonna say like you and I were comparable at the end of college, which may or not be true. I don't actually remember anymore most of college. So
the darkness is
but like
from
over. That to like,
the darkness is already taking over that part of your memory. That recent.
It really has, dude. I remember like bits and pieces here and there, but a lot of it's just like, and then I went to college. Yeah. My point of this is like, right, if we were like comparable, then like at the start of home games, I felt like you knew a lot, and I was like, had to catch up to like even remotely be helpful to you. I don't know. Maybe that's just like how I was thinking about it, or like how I was envisioning it. But I definitely do still feel that way sometimes, where it's like, Jesus, I got a lot to learn.
But like all I did was I took technologies and ideas and stuff that people had already shown me and explained to me, and I like built something that I thought would be cool using stuff people told me about. Like, I'm not different. I don't know. Whatever, man. Don't suck my dick. That's all I'm saying.
You can't stop me, coward. All right. We'll save the rest of that for the episode 100, where I actually do it live.
I had one little bullet point that I added at the last minute. It was just Slack. Basically, I recently built, I might have talked about this before, but I recently built an integration with a Slack API just to basically send messages to channels and list channels and all that kind of stuff. And so in order to do that, I needed to build a Slack application, right? And kind of, which is essentially a packaged named thing that I associate with my code that I write. and then send over to Slack, and then Slack can distribute it to people, which is the same model really as the game publishing stuff that we want to do. So the way that Slack does it is pretty interesting. Essentially, it's make an account, publish your app.
Mm-hmm.
When your app is published, I think you can kind of test it within your group. Like my developer team can use this Slack app and authenticate with our app as we're developing it, and then we distribute the app to a public like Slack marketplace and makes it searchable and all that kind of stuff. And then at that point, it hasn't been reviewed by Slack. But when someone goes to install it, there's a big banner at the top that says this has not been reviewed by Slack. Mm-hmm. I imagine at some point I can either request them to review it, or they just have like a backlog of reviews. I'm not quite sure. But at what point that will go away and it just becomes like an app. And then I don't know what their update process is like once you have that approval. But I think we should basically mirror that, which is you make your game, you develop it, you whatever. You have it in kind of this shareable private state, kind of the equivalent of an unlisted video on YouTube. It's like I can send this to you, we can see it, give feedback on it, but no one can see it unless they have this. And then at that point, you kind of make it public and you say, this is my published version. Boom, like this is available. And then people can play it and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm kind of looser on the process afterwards. If people ask us to look at it or if we just do, I imagine at least at the start, we can be kind of proactive about that and just go see everything, basically snoop our own database and just see everything and review it, give it the home game stamp or the home games whatever. So, but yeah, basically I just think that we should rip off that idea completely.
I do like that idea. My only concern, that's not really a concern. If we thumbs down it doesn't really change anything. It just stays as unlisted, right?
No, I don't think we should be able to thumbs down something. The only power we should have to remove...
not thumbs down something. I mean, like it fails some part of the home games check. Like it fails home dome, or it fails like our code review. Like,
oh yeah,
it basically does something that we would term like breaking TOS or illegal, however we wanted to describe that.
Well, so
it just stays as unlisted, right?
If it fails the home dome check, then we can't make a build of it. Like we can't publish a game that we can't run. So like home dome, basically someone submits a request to publish a game on the website. The game request goes to the home dome service, and the home dome checks out the code, runs into some problem, and says, hey, you can't publish this. Like it's not unlisted because it was never actually created. It failed the creation step, I guess. And the commit obviously exists, right? Because home dome pulls it from a public Git repository from a public commit. So that commit info is all there, and I guess the developers of that game that failed the check can share that repo and work on their code locally, however they do. And once they get something that can pass a build and create a published version, like that's a published version. Like it's there and it's unlisted. You can publish it if you want to, but we have this created kind of stored version of your game at this point, and you can publish any version of it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or distribute, I guess, is the equivalent of the Slack thing. But yeah, like I made the game. I have 12 different dev versions that I've actually put through Home Dome. They're kind of alpha or beta, whatever drafts, right? Like the equivalent of that. And they're not ready. They're just shareable technically, maybe rough versions that I want to send someone through the home games kind of distribution network stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, I think for me, it's going to make more sense when I go to publish a game, and then I can see how all of this plays out, and like where it fails, like how it fails, what happens, like that kind of, basically like just doing it and seeing how it goes will probably help. But I think I follow what you're saying right now.
Yeah, I guess if it were YouTube, you have kind of like, say you have a video project instead of just one video. And so you create a video project, and in this case, it would be a game, right? The equivalent for us. And so then it's called My Movie or whatever. And the YouTube equivalent would be, I keep uploading new drafts of this movie, and it's an unlisted draft. And so I can share this through YouTube. I can share this game through home games, but it's not publicly searchable, viewable. It's not really ready for the public yet. And the YouTube thing would be like, I keep uploading new unlisted videos, and then eventually I can mark one as public. Or I can mark multiple as public, and those are published versions of the game that are just now discoverable. And there's kind of that distinction between being created, published, and I guess published and discoverable in this case are the same. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. It might be confusing, but yeah, we'll build it, and then you'll see it, and you'll be like, oh, cool.
Yeah. I guess my only question was like, if somebody put out a game, right, and it went in as unlisted, does Home Dome check at that point before, like, say you put up a game and you want to send it to me to play test it with you? Does Home Dome test it before I can try it with you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So you submitted the code.
So Home Dome thumbs it down. USOL. You got to try again. You gotta pass Home Dome.
Yeah, if Home Dome fails the check, you still have your game, right? Like, you still have your named game kind of container with whatever versions you have in it. But this attempt to publish a version, or to create a version, not publish a version, to create a version, failed. So there is no game version to share at the end of the day, because it was unable to be created. When I send it to somebody, then that's just me, like, privately sharing the game data that was created when I made that request.
I see.
I understand. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Well, yeah, that was basically it. I just think the Slack model is pretty good. I would like to mimic it. I am continuing to work on services. I will hopefully have these things kind of, workable, ready to kind of go to the next stage of cleanup. At the end of all of this, the actual home games core and squisher stuff that I was working on is being reviewed by Yazeed, and maybe we'll have some follow-up on that. And shit's going. Shit's moving.
Woo!
Anything?
Q1, baby.
Yeah. Anything you wanted to add before we blow this popsicle stand? Is it popsicle stand or just pop stand?
It's definitely a popsicle stand, because if you're blowing a pop stand, a lot of people are going to get sticky.
Popsicles are also sticky.
Popsicles?
Yeah, like, are you aware of popsicles?
Yeah, I am aware of popsicles. Sorry, I was thinking it was made of, like, popsicle sticks, as opposed to being like it's a place that sells popsicles.
No, but that's like I would imagine. But do you assume that a pop stand is made of soda?
No. Oh, no. I assumed a popsicle stand was a stand constructed out of popsicles.
Okay.
But a soda stand, a pop stand was a place that sold sodas.
Okay. I'm understanding.
So if you blew a pop stand, that's just making soda go everywhere. But if you blow up a popsicle stand, it's just made out of popsicle sticks. So whatever was going on in there may still be affected, but it's less sticky probably than just a stand dedicated to selling soda,
For our 100th episode, we're going to build a real-life pop stand and blow it up for our audience. Hopefully, you guys are there to watch.
Yeah, we'll Joseph's going to spend all that sick $120 he saves on his...
I'm going to spend it all on popsicles or fucking soda, whatever I just said.
On soda and explosives. I can't be tied directly to explosives, just for the record.
You're on video. You're going down, bud. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, our music is done by our friend Tynan. He is Nitan on Bandcamp. That is Nitan, Nytan. You can find us on Twitter at HomeGamesIO. We have a website, homegames.io. Currently kind of building stuff. Might be busted in some ways. Anyway, you should go check it out still. That's going to do it for us. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.